Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. This week my guest is Scott McKenzie from Molly Limpets. It's quite a long episode, but everything Scott has to say is very, very important, so please listen. In the episode we talk about his own portrayal of a dame, the struggles of being a costume owner, maker and designer, and also where the name Molly Limpets came from. So please sit back and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. My guest today is Scott McKenzie here from Molly Limpets.
Yes.
Firstly, the name Molly Limpets.
Uh-huh.
How did that come about?
Well, if I'm honest, and the short story is, Molly Limpet's actually my niece. It's not a real name. When I was looking for a name for the company, the longer version was years and years ago. I was in a production of a musical called Irene, and I played a French fashion designer called Madame Lucy, who invented this fictitious female name to which he would attribute all his designs to. And I thought it'd be really funny to have fun to have a lady's name to head the company out, because I'd love being in this old musical. And I sort of looked at a lot of music hall names and old actresses' names, and things are connected with their estate, and you get into a bit of a dodgy area by just plucking somebody's name out and going to call your company after some famous person. And I'd gone to see my mum, and I said, "Oh, I'm going in 10 minutes," and she says, "Oh, hang around." She says, "Your sister's coming, and she's bringing little Molly Limpet with her," which was my niece's nickname when she was a child, because that was the name they were going to call her. And when she was born, they called her Catherine, and she was very, very clingy as a baby. So my sister called her the Limpet, and then my mum one day went, "Little Molly Limpet," and I went, "That's what I'm going to call my company." So as she was born in the October, as I opened in the following May, and it sort of stuck. She's embarrassed like hell about it. She's coming up on 19 years old, and we had an experience where the teachers from her school, our primary school, had come in because they were doing a sort of a Dragon's Den style thing on the plague, and the kids had to come up with plague cures while they dressed up as like Tudor people and Tudor dragons. And I told the headmaster this story about why, and then he just ripped her for the rest of her time at primary school. So she really hates me about that. She's not got to the "it's cool yet" phase, but I think that might come maybe in her mid-20s or 30s.
Or when she finds out it's in the will.
Yes, possibly. She might like it then if she's getting some money out of it.
So how did your first ever experience in a theatre come about?
The first time I went to the theatre, I was 3. I was taken to see my father, who was at the Pavilion in Glasgow, and he was in a must have been a musical review, and I was sat on the front row, on the aisle seat of the front row, and I was taken with the idea of, I can be taken out. You know, I was too young. We'll go and see it, and I can be taken out. And my dad was a musician and was part of it must have been some kind of summer show, some summer review, and I could be taken out of the theatre. And I just sat there mesmerised through the whole thing. And then I was lucky enough, because my dad was involved in a lot of theatre shows, because he was in sort of a comedy show band at the time, and so he did a lot of things with a lot of variety people in. And then sort of in the 70s, my father was in the band that played on behalf of the Wombles. So they did a Wombles stage show, and it was in Glasgow for a summer, I believe. And my dad was in the pit, and we were taken to see that. And I got to go backstage, and they had wallpapered backstage with newspaper, which the Wombles had done, or maybe it was just, as I remember, it was just the merchandise counter or something. But I remember seeing these wallpapered things, and I was taken backstage. And you know, the thing they say with kids is you shouldn't let them see the characters without their heads on and stuff. Well, they didn't believe that back in the 1970s. So I was there, and I saw these headless wombles all getting changed and arranging to go out for a curry and things. So that was my first sort of early, like, going to the theatre things. And I think I'd always wanted to go more. I remember as a child wanting to go to the circus, but in those days, my father was a musician, my mum didn't work. The taking the kids to the circus was just not an option. I mean, I suppose the theatre, I only went to see things my dad was in because we would have got complimentary tickets. But my mum was very creative, and she would always. It was not, we can't afford to take you to the circus. It was, let's make our own circus at home. So we would kind of, there was a lot of imaginative play, and I got into sort of puppetry very, very quickly because it gave me a theatrical outlet. And I remember I would be maybe 5 and getting Sooty and Sweep for Christmas, and having this, I would do sort of puppet shows at the front window to the kids going to school and going home, or at lunchtime I would be doing puppets up at the window. I couldn't see the reaction, but I just knew there was a crowd of people, and I got a sort of some marionettes and things very, very young. And I kind of, my first sort of, I suppose my theatrical thing was, I was through puppetry, and it's something that became, and I ended up having my own, my father built me a Punch and Judy booth because he was a carpenter, and my mum made me all the puppets for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I used to do Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with these puppets that my mum had made for me. And I suppose I got into making my own stuff when I could, and I which I suppose was the sewing and things that came with the practicals of making puppets. And then I got really, as a teenager, it became something that I became increasingly embarrassed about, and it became a sort of a secret, and I didn't do, because I had no outlet. I think in this day and age now, where there's so much available for young people in the theatres and youth theatres and dance and stuff, there wasn't that when I was young, or there wasn't around, or it wasn't made available to me. So I would do puppet shows at school, like in junior school, and I would carry this Punch and Judy booth did not fall down, and I would carry it up and down to school, like inside it, and do puppet shows and things for different classes, and it was something that I really enjoyed. And when I was then at school, my mum was always creative, so being creative and craft and things like that were always very much encouraged, and cutting things up. And then I was really, really lucky that I had a junior school teacher, and they always say, you have one teacher, and it was a lady called Mrs. Heslop, and I got in her class, and she was quite a creative lady. She did the cooking at school, and she taught sewing, and I used to be a very, very severe asthmatic as a child, and when half the class would go swimming, the other half would do sewing, and I did no swimming, so I was always in class doing sewing. So probably as maybe an 8-9-year-old, she taught me how to use a sewing machine, and because I'd done all the sewing projects, and she would let me make puppets on the sewing machine in the classroom. And then what I didn't realise was, at the time, I didn't realise this until many, many years later, that she was involved in a lot of amateur dramatics, and we always used to do, and she used to do little plays and things that we would present at and I remember playing Rumpelstiltskin at junior school, being maybe 10, 11, and thinking, this just feels so right. This is where I belong. And I think you get this idea of, because there only is offered to kids, really, if you want to be involved in the theatre, it's performing. Nobody really goes, do you know what? There's a whole host of other jobs that make that production. And I think that's something that, as I got older, I learned that the puppets really I got that kicked out at senior school. That wasn't the done thing to be into puppets. So the puppets were made in the basement and never performed, but I used to continue to make them and make marionettes and things. And then my deputy head at senior school, somehow discovered that I'd been doing puppetry, and I didn't have a great time at school. Secondary school was not a great time for me. I was during the 80s. There was the teachers' industrial action, and my school really embraced that. So school plays were not happening, sports teams weren't happening, all these extracurricular activities stopped, and we also had a big exchange on with Australian teachers. So during my O levels, it was a very dry period, and you there was nobody doing. I mean, I was running the drama club at school because no members of staff would do it. So I was trying to find my theatrical feet, as it were, and that's where I kind of sort of discovered costume was a much more acceptable road for me in production rather than puppets. Although I still have a great love of puppets and all things like that, and I sometimes do make the odd. I like the chance when I can do that in costume form, and do we make a fox head that is actually a puppet inside that can be manipulated, and so that's kind of sort of how I kind of realised that I enjoyed the theatre and I came at school thinking, do I want to go and train to be an actor? Because that wasn't really. It wasn't doing it for me. I loved doing the bits of directing at the drama club and script work and creating costumes and stuff. And I would find like little books with little sketches in. And there was a fabulous little sketchbook written by Johnny Ball, and I loved that book. And I lost it. And I actually, a few years ago, went and found it on eBay and bought an old copy of it just to have it, because it was just something that had gone astray years ago. And there was like lovely little books that I had, like by John Inman putting on a play.
I had that.
I had that book and I thought it was wonderful.
And on the front cover, he's got a plaster on his finger.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, what did he do to his finger?
I don't know. But again, I've gone back on eBay and on a second-hand book because I felt that was such an important part of. It had been such an important part of my growing up life that I wanted to have that, which had gone astray. I'd been thrown out by my parents probably at some point when I left home. But it was just such an important thing of this Johnny Ball book and this John Inman book. And I think it tells you a lot about. It tries to tell you a lot about comedy and stuff that I think is inherently funny, because there's an inherent silliness to it all, and it says, like, get some broom handles and make some curtains and make a pantomime horse out of a box, and that really triggered a lot of, how do I make it look less like a cardboard box and more like a pantomime horse that I've seen on Rent-A-Ghost, and how does the mouth work and how do the eyes work? And it took me years and years of experimenting and stuff, still not to get it right at times, but you think, how do I make that so its eyes blink? And and I'm not technically minded like that. The actual technicalities are, I know how to pull strings and lot of experimenting on stuff like that in the past. And I enjoy making animals and things. So I think that's where the puppetry allows me to be experimental and think. But I think also the puppetry thing allows me to be a terrible micromanager as well, because I'm in control of the puppet and I'm in control of what it wears and I'm in control of what it does. So I think there are times when I've done a bit of directing on the side that I think I'm probably a really bad director because I'm so conscious of trying to control the puppet that I'm trying to maybe step back a little and let the actor give them perhaps a little more room than I would like. But it's good fun.
What about your first pantomime you saw then?
Do you know what? I can't remember the first pantomime I saw. I know I've seen stuff when I lived in Glasgow. And I know I've seen Stanley Baxter, who is a great hero of mine. And I have a lovely little note that one of my best friends got from Stanley. I was quite ill before a pantomime that I was in one year, and he wrote to Stanley Baxter, who had retired by this point, and saying that, you know, I hadn't been very well, but I was still doing my pantomime. And he wrote me this lovely little handwritten note. And it's in my bedside cabinet at home. I keep it there. It's one of my precious things. But I suppose one of my earliest memories, and I'm talking that I have a vividity. Is that a word? Anyway, I create my whole language here. We have a whole set of words. But I remember, and it was at the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield, and I remember that pantomime. Absolutely, I could describe it to a T. It was Mother Goose. Was there a name in it? I doubt it. I don't remember it. But there were so many things in that I remember going, wow, I love that. As a design element, that is fabulous. I remember they had a wicked fairy and a good fairy. And they were the same costume, just in different colours. And that blew my mind, that you could have a wicked fairy and a good fairy that were the same, but a mirror image of and I kind of always have that in my head. Also, that Mother Goose, her opening costume was white and yellow. White dress, yellow apron. There was a goose on the front of the apron. She had eggs all round the hem. And when she became rich, the costume became silver and gold. The identical costume. And that was my real thing about realising that it wasn't just the pantomime I liked, it was the whole costume thing. I remember that each of the villagers there was an orange one, a yellow one, a blue one, a green one, and their apron fronts were, so the orange one would be a marigold, the yellow one was a daffodil, and they were striped skirts, self-coloured bodices. They had bonnets. And bonnets is my nemesis, because the amount of times that I design shows and put bonnets in. And now, because I know people don't like wearing bonnets, and now sometimes I just like to piss dancers off by giving them a bonnet. Particularly in a finale. You know, I'd love to give them a bonnet so they can go, I'm not wearing that bonnet. But but I do remember it really, really vividly. Bobby Nutt, would have been the star of the show back then. And there are two things that I have from that show. I actually have Priscilla from that show. The actual goose is downstairs in my studio. And I have Mother Goose's finale costume from that production.
Wow.
And it's third hand to me, because I went to Crucible Sale when I must have been in my early 20s, and they were selling these costumes off. And the Priscilla is rescued from a skip outside the Crucible Theatre that the lighting men got it and stuck it on eBay. And I was bidding on it, and somebody that I knew said, "Are you bidding on a goose on eBay?" And I went, "Yeah, I am." And he goes, "Well, it's the lighting men at the Crucible that got it out the skip. If you give them £100, it's yours." So I couldn't get to the bank fast enough to give them this thing. But it was knackered. It was so knackered, but I can't part with it. But she's broken, but she's beautiful. And as it turns out, talk about coincidences. When I went to senior school, my best friend, Arthur, who was a great influence on me. His father is Rodney Ford, the set designer, who did all of the Forbidden Planets. But he had been the resident designer at the Crucible at that time when I had seen that show. So he had made that goose, which I have got. The design of the Mother Goose finale, which had gone to the sale, and literally on one side of the rail I had hold of it, and on the other side of the dress was a dame who I knew had got hold of it, and literally there was a tussle, and he was bigger and older than me, and he took it, and then 2 years ago he passed away, and he was with an amateur company, and they decided they were having a costume sale and a clear out, and we'd been working with them on a higher basis, just because it was easier for them, rather than having to make all the costumes. They were selling things off, and that dress was there, so I bought it, and it's not got all its bits with it, and at some point I would love to restore it, or restore the bits that I knew went with it, but it was just so lovely to have because it was from my first pantomime. So I have the goose from my first pantomime that I can remember seeing when I came to Sheffield for the first time, and I would be whatever J3 was, so about 9. I would be 9. My birthday's in January, so I maybe 9 or 10 around that time. So, I have this 40-year-old goose downstairs and stuff. So it's nice for me to think, you know what, that was my first pantomime, and I've never sent the dress out to anybody, and it's like some of the things that are in my collection are just, you've got to be really special to get that. I've got to really like you for me to go, and I have this finale dress. But it's just something that I just feel very lucky to have.
What part of you then decided, or when was it that you actually decided that you didn't really want to tread the boards and you wanted to concentrate more on the costumes?
Well, if I'm honest, I only gave up treading the boards about 6 years ago. I would do Panto, and I wouldn't do much else. I got into directing when I was 18, because that gave me, I was lucky to find a company that allowed me to design costumes, and I worked with some really good wardrobe people that would create, with limited budgets, my designs. And I sort of, when I realised there was opportunities beyond being an actor, and I enjoyed acting, don't get me wrong, the one thing that stood in my way was I was still based in Sheffield then, and I was involved in some theatre groups, and I couldn't lose my accent. So I could take on an accent. So if they wanted me to be like a Liverpool or a London or a different Scottish accent, I could do that, but I couldn't lose my accent enough to be somebody's son in a play. And that was what was always getting levelled at me auditions. You were good enough, but we're all doing it in a Yorkshire accent, and I couldn't lose my accent to be a Sheffield accent. So I always had to play outsiders, somebody that came to visit, and sometimes it would work. And I always like to take on a voice for a character. I don't know why, it's just always, I like to do silly voices, I think. So that was kind of what I enjoyed, but it meant that I wasn't cast a lot. So I kind of looked at doing set painting and props, and I met some really good designers through that really pushed me as a designer and allowed me to, that showed me that that there was more to theatre than just being the performer. For every performer that's on there, there's 2 or 3 people backstage making sure they actually get on to do their performing. And I suppose having a father who was a performer in bands and things, he wasn't keen for me to do that performance thing, get a proper job, and that's kind of what I did leaving school. But I wasn't great at school. I didn't want to have a career in a regular job. It was the acting or the designing that was still the thing. But I was trying to be a good boy and do as I was told. But that didn't work out because I just became a naughty boy that just didn't go to school and didn't go to college and was told, then you better get a proper job.
What was your first job then?
My first job, I went to my first job I loved. I went to be, I was one of the first non-teaching assistants in a primary school. And I had to do that with janitorial work. So I would help in classrooms, and then I would sweep up the hall afterwards. And I enjoyed it. And I was there for maybe a term or so, and I got involved in the Christmas concert, and I made a Priscilla, and I made costumes for the kids and the show, and I couldn't wait to get to work, and I would have to get to work at 6 a.m. to do the janitorial work, so I could start to do the other bits. And then I did that for a while, and then because that was done under I suppose like a sort of like one of those 1980s YTS apprenticeship schemes, which was pretty naff. And then I went to a job after that, which I loved, and it was called the Surplus Buying Agency, and it was just a load of stuff that nobody wanted that we just repackaged and sold to other people. So, and you used to have to do all the invoicing by hand. So, and all the mental arithmetic. So my mental arithmetic, because I used to be able to do like 1737s and 2942 pences, and I used to have to do it in front of the customer without a calculator because the guy there was just old school. But I loved it. It was just really tiny little. It was working in a small team, and it kind of allowed me. I got loads of pencils because there was like hundreds of pencils, and you just would take them home. And so the drawing and stuff and pens and things allowed me to draw, and I loved that job. And then we were all made redundant, and then I thought, with the idea that we were all going to be laid off for the 6 weeks holidays, and then my job just didn't materialise again. So I went to another job which I thought would be similar, and it was not similar at all. But I spent 3 years there doing warehouse work and things, and I realised that I liked working in a small team, but I liked working with small teams that were really positive, and this was not a good experience. We had 3 pretty dire years of getting up at stupid o'clock in the morning, having to walk 2 miles to get a bus, to get off the bus and have another mile to walk at the other end. But all through this I was designing and drawing and creating and doing a lot of theatre work wherever I could get it, but I needed to work. I needed a daytime job. So I did that for a while, and then I suppose from there I went to sell computers, computer mainframe. So I went from that job to earning money, you know what I mean, from being something like that now. And I sold computer mainframe, but it allowed me to be quite like to discover the internet, because we were having the internet and discovering all that through the computer industry, and I remember back in the day like doing internet searches for pantomime, and I think it was just the very, very beginning of things like itsbehindyu.com and things like that, and logging on every day just to see what new thing was on. And there wouldn't be things every day, but you'd go, oh, something new, and I knew then that, and there would be pictures of old pantos, and you would go, wow, this is great, this is so much. Oh, that's what Dan Leno looked like. Oh, there's pictures of Les Dawson, and there's pictures of things. And oh, you can find out where John Inman is this Christmas. And me and by that point, my best friend were doing our own little panto visits out in the area and going, oh, we always like this theatre, and we always go to Wakefield because those pantomimes back in the 80s were really, really good. And we'd always go to Bradford and see the big Alhambra shows, and and you just got. It gave me money, that job, to get out and see more, and you'd be looking at what's out there, because suddenly everything became so. The internet, I think, for me and Panto, showed me the length and breadth of it. And you would go and see some pretty rubbish stuff, and you would go and see some brilliant stuff, and you realise that with pantomime, I developed a little phrase from that, and my idea of pantomime is like a trifle. Everybody makes one, but they're all different. So some pantomime, there's a lot of cream and a lot of sprinkles, but there's not much custard and jelly. Whereas some, it's all jelly and sponge cake, but there's very little cream on top. But they're all trifle. They're all the same thing. And I think that is the one thing that I do like about pantomime. I'm talking to producers, and whether it's in-house producers or people that maybe have a couple of theatres, and they go, I can do this in this theatre, but I can't take that and put that into that theatre, because the people that come to that theatre like that thing. They like it with more cream on it. They like the extra sprinkles. They like the fact that there's no cherries in this one. And I think that's what appeals to people with pantomime across the board. You see people that go, we go to this because there's no names in it, and we see that all the money's been spent on the costumes and the scenery and the rest of it. But some people go, you know what, I really like to go and see it because I love that name. I love them when they're on the TV or what have you. And that's what, I suppose in a sense, brings people into the theatre. And whether they are technically as capable as people that have been doing it for years and years and years, you've brought somebody into the theatre that may never have watched live theatre before. And people say, oh, pantomime is the first experience children get in the theatre. Yes, it is. But sometimes it's the first experience adults get in the theatre by actually taking their children because they didn't go. And they see things. And people then fall in love with it. I mean, like in Sheffield, and we have Damien Williams. And people just love him. You know, they love the way he does it. The Sheffield people embrace that wholeheartedly. They did it with Bobby Nutt. When Bobby Nutt was at the Christmas, they loved Bobby Nutt there. They've done it on with Brian Platts, the City Hall pantomime. People loved Brian and the way Brian made his pantomime. They love the way Damien performs. Whether they all love each other's, you know, remains, you know. But people go to that because it's exactly what it says on the tin. They know what they're going to get. They know, and they love that, and it becomes part of their family Christmas. You know, we always go the third Saturday in the, you know, we always have that, and we always have these seats, and it's generational, and that's fabulous. That's what. And if someone can make grandma laugh, and make the granddaughter laugh, then they're a winner. You know?
What point then did it come from becoming a bit of a hobby in your spare time to designing and making costumes to actually people picking up the phone and saying to you, can you do this, can you do that?
I don't. Basically, I was in the computer industry and I was doing it freelance, spare time, any work I could get, and I was really lucky because the company I worked for was taken over by an American firm, and I decided that there came a point where, this wasn't where my heart was, and I just says, I need to. The money was one thing, and you just think, but you know what? It's not the whole thing. I need to do something. I kind of sort of hit my early 30s and thought, I need to do something more than just turn up to work. I've got an opportunity here, so let me grasp that. And I said to myself, do you know what? I'm going to do this full time. And back then, my thing was, I was going to stack beans in a supermarket. And that's no disrespect to anyone that stacks beans in a supermarket. But it was just a thing that I could get a job doing something else. And I thought, I really want to make this. I want to turn this collection of costumes, which went from a box under the bed to a wardrobe to a spare room, work for me. And I kind of naively, the gall that I had, the nerve to go, hey, we're doing this. And I decided that the only way I could fund what I was doing was to try and do costumes which were available to everybody. So I got a shop, unit, and I decided to start. And so I started with an element of fancy dress. And fancy dress has got a dirty word. It's like the dirtiest words in the costume industry. And people do look down on you because you say fancy dress. And people think cheap and nasty. But that wasn't where I wanted to go with it. I said, I'm sure there's a market for people that want really good, really clean, really well-made stuff. And so I was going to do that because that would fund me to build up a collection. So I started with about, I think I managed to get about 75 costumes to open with, which I thought was a lot. And I got 3-story shop, which we only used the bottom floor. And then I was lucky to get my first Panto booking, which was a Cinderella, and I made it in conjunction with somebody else. So I did things like the ball and the men's finale, the men's ball, some of the Ugly Sisters, and I was really lucky because I'd gone into John Lewis's in Sheffield to buy some patterns, because I thought, I don't want to have to draft all these different sizes of ball gown. If I get a bodice pattern, I can work on something. And I got chatting to the assistant there, and she was a costume graduate, and that started, and I said, when's your break? Do you want to come for a coffee? And we had a conversation, and she was temporary. She was Christmas temp, and she came to work with me, and she created me a set of ball gowns. She created me a set of blocks that I still use today. So she created me bodice blocks from a size 6 up to a size 24, and they're still the basis on which we work today. They're a bit shabby, and some of them have been recut into heavier card and stuff. And it's funny because, she came, she did a couple of shows. She made the Cinderella. She made me Guys and Dolls. which was the first musical that we created in house, and she made them a hot box, daywear and suits and things, and then started from there. We did, and then I by that point I was getting out and finding other makers that could take designs and make up for me, and I've still got the set of ball gowns downstairs, and I still have the spare fabric. So if ever I need another one, I've got rolls of fabric that are tied up saying Cinderella ball gowns do not touch. Because that is the thing about being able to maintain as a commercial costume house, is being able to maintain everything ongoing. But yeah, and then funnily enough, I mean, this girl left to do other things. She emigrated to New Zealand. She's just come back, and literally I was on the phone with her like 3 weeks ago saying I'm back and I'm making, and I'm going, right, okay then, once I'm into Panto mode, well, she'll be having a chat. But she made me, when we did Disney's Beauty and the Beast, when that came on general release, and she made me Belle's ball gowns. She made them on a barge down in Bristol, I think she was at the time. But she made them on a barge, and it was really fabulous. She made these great gowns, and I remember at the time thinking, gosh, these are going to be really expensive. But they were works of art, because they would go from I could get a size 6 in them and a size 14, because all the panel pieces would all unbutton, and the buttons were the centres of the flowers, and there was elastic loops as part of the design, so that the whole bodice unbuttons and goes up, so you can make it fit from a 6 to a 14, and then it looses up the back, and it's got sleeves button into the buttonholes, so it comes apart for cleaning and stuff. So it was a feat of engineering back then, and it's lovely that that people that can come and go within the company. I've been really fun, because everybody brings their knowledge, and leaves with knowledge, and you never stop learning, and that's what I say to anyone that walks in the building. I'm going to learn from you, and you're going to learn from me, and we'll take it from there.
When then did you move here to this giant warehouse?
Well, this is the third move. So we had an upstairs at a barn, which we thought was massive, and it was cold. It was freezing cold, and then I realised you can't keep costumes in the cold. So we were there for a few months, and then we moved to a big industrial unit, which I thought I would never fill in a million years, and I filled it within 3. And then we moved in here 8 years ago, which was double the size of what we had, and I could do with the same space all over again. Things change, your customer base changes, your customers' needs change, the shows change. What I was supplying for Panto 10 years ago is probably different from what I'm supplying for Pantos now. We probably wouldn't make what we made 10 years ago. We're probably not going to make that anything this season, because it's not wanted. It's like female principal boys. I've got probably 170 different variations on a rail. We haven't made a new one for 3 or 4 years, because I've got 170 of them, and nobody wants them. I couldn't give them away. People don't have that style of principal boy anymore. So the past few years it's all been male, and we're building up. Every year people come and go, oh, I've got a principal boy and it's male and he's this size, and I think to myself, that's another make. I need to make another Dick Whittington, I need to make another Robin Hood, and we're constantly developing patterns so that we're not a female principal where you're following a very set silhouette, whereas you're not following that with, when you've got a man, you're looking at different lengths of waistcoats. Some new principal boys they're also the comedian. So, if they're Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack doesn't have a brother, because it's the principal boy is doing part of the comedian and the thing. And that's, I suppose, maybe the demise of certain pantomime characters. That Jack doesn't always have a brother. Aladdin doesn't always have a wishy-washy. You're seeing certain characters disappear, and then certain characters come back. I mean, we saw a big thing a couple of years ago of an actress as Dandini, so that she plays the fairy godmother and Dandini, because it saves a wage. And so you do see characters sort of. It's like pantomime stories, sort of called ebb and flow, and
like a fashion.
I suppose so. I think things get Disneyed. And people think, well, my child doesn't know Dick Whittington, so we'll go and see Cinderella because they know that. And I think things that used to be very, very popular become less popular, and you see new, like the different pantomime versions of Peter Pan that are very popular. Beauty and the Beast, never really done before the Disney cartoon that much, is now, we have some years, we always seem to get like the pantomime that everybody's doing. I think that's because your regulars are kind of going round in a circle, and they all kind of once in a while congregate, and you'll go, oh crikey, we're doing a lot of Robinson Crusoes, or everyone's doing something new, and then you see old things come out, like Treasure Island seems to have come back, particularly in the amateur world, because I think some of the amateur customers are keeping some stories alive. It's lovely when you get a chance to do things like Mother Goose and the Goldilocks thing, which just seems to have come out of nowhere, and everyone going, hey, you can do what they're doing at the London Palladium, do my Goldilocks. A lot of script writers are pushing out things, different things, but I think there are different fashions in pantomime. I think people see something and they go, oh, I'd like something like that, and like quick change Cinderellas, for example. People never had that. She went off, she had a body double, or she would just go off and she would put a beautiful gown on. And then now people go, oh, I want her to have a gown that transforms instantly in front of my eyes. And then you have to explain to people how that works. And she really needs to be on her way, because you're never going to get the epicness of that kind of gown in that instant. You really wanted to get her off and let her make the skirt work with centrifugal force, and get her into the carriage so you can just see the bodice, and then get her off for the end, and then put the structure underneath to give her a crinoline or a panniers or whatever else is added to give her that moment at the top of the stairs. But that's something that's new, and you just go, okay, let's make that work. And then you go, but she's got to come for a fitting. She's got to come for a fitting. I've got to show her how it works, and you have to tell the director, that's fine how you're going to do it, but as the person that's created it, this is the best way to get the effect. And that can be trying at times. You just go, I know you're the director and it should be your vision, and I understand that, but this is how this works. This is how it physically works, and if you can make it at this point, and could you have the song from there, or you just have to work it. She's just going to be stood there in it, and it's not going to have the impact for them to do a big ballad. Maybe the fairy could do it, and you have to have those conversations. Because I had something like, that's how I know how to make it work, and that's how it works.
And do you feel protective over that, like the transformation scene yourself?
I think so. I think you get really protective about your designs anyway. I really try hard not to copy. I hate it when a customer comes in or a client comes in and they go, I've got this design, and they've got somebody else's sketch, and you have to ask them, why isn't the person that designed it making it? Sometimes it's budgetary, and then I say, well, the thing is, if I design it and make it, and you've got a budget to stick to, if you give me where I need to be as a ballpark figure, I'll design it to that price. And I may say to you, the reason I've designed it like this is because I've got a pattern for that already. Or I'm going to take that bodice pattern and then this skirt pattern and then these sleeves. So it's going to be unique, and I'm going to do it in this colour scheme and this way. But because it's the patterns are already cut, it will be cheaper for you. And that's how we can make things work. Because ultimately no one's got the budget that they want.
You're finding that's more of a challenge these days.
It is, I mean, I get that. I mean, it's the same thing that people doing like 3-show days. They're trying to make as much money within a shorter period of time. So actors are going, well, you've got 6 weeks of 3-show days, and you just go dead on our feet. And you sometimes feel for dames when you've got a 3-show day and they've got try to do 12 changes. And they've got half an hour rest between shows, and they may have to do meet and greets and all these new things that are around that they need. You need it to sell tickets. I understand all that, but I think sometimes you've just got to. You've got to get that you can't sometimes conjure money out of nowhere, and if you're in a small venue and you're charging at the top of your ticket price, and that's what you've got, then that's one thing. And then you just have to say, well, we have to cut the cloth accordingly. So we either lose a change. Do people, I always think one change for your leading lady or isn't going to break the bank. Really, you can go back to most accounts people and say, I just need one more costume, and most of the time they're, oh yeah, I see where you're coming from. But it's when you say, I've got the whole company and I've got 10 babes, 6 senior dancers, 4 pro girls, 4 pro boys, and I want them all to change again. And then you've got to go back and go, well, that's a big ask. And that's when people go, well, no, you've not got that in the budget. But it's then, you try to say, well, what, maybe do they take a jacket off? Do they put a jacket on? Can this work in 2 ways? If they wore the waistcoat with a sash in one scene and put the coat on for the finale, does that work? And you have to try and bring it in, and it's that decisions you make with somebody about how they make their show work. But I mean, fabrics go up in price, electricity goes up, wages go up, and everything else is going up, and you try to keep and you try to be competitive, and that's, you just have to make it work. It's as simple as that.
Is there much of a difference then between working with amateur groups and working with pro groups?
Well, we work with anybody that wants a costume. I love all. I love it all. Because we work, say, with amateur groups from small village halls. In fact, one of my longest customer is a lovely little village down in Sparkwell, and they must have been using me for about 15 years, and it's a real community down there. And and we've watched people grow up through the cast that start off as a child, gone to college, come back to the village, and now are in it and directing it, and it's wonderful. And they come up to see me every year, and it's a real benchmark in my year. And I have a member of staff that would come in if they were in on a day that they weren't working. Will come in because it's those people, because they have such an affinity. Because these people become your friends, whether professionals or amateurs. These people, you get to know them, and there's Christmas cards and stuff like that. You get to know them, and you get to know what they like as well. So that if I'm shopping for fabric, I'll go, that dame will love that fabric, and I'm making it with somebody in mind. They might not know it yet, but we're making it with them. But then again, the professionals, it's different, because with the professionals, you are getting a more homogenized size. You're getting 3 girls that are no bigger than X. So, as far as an investment in it, and if you know that show may transfer, you can go, you know what, I am going to spend a bit more. Because I know that they're not having it just for a week, they're having it for 6 weeks. And then they're having it for 6 weeks next year, and maybe 6 weeks the year after. So you're making something that's got, 18 weeks worth of hire on it, and you go, you know what, I'm making my money at the end of year 3, and I'm making some profit. I mean, we have big customers that are taking like 200 and 300 costumes on an amateur level, and you go, and this is when my accountant thinks I'm nuts, because he says, you don't make any money on it. You don't. You look at what you spent on it and what you make on it. I said, no, the bill is big, but what it's cost you to make it. And I went, yeah, but I will use it again in other things. Sometimes things get reworked, but I'm not saying I'm not sat on sets of costumes that have been a head over heart thing, and I'm sat here with a Land of Fire that I've made once and it's never been back out again. And every time someone comes for a lad and goes, have you thought about the Cave of Fire? And they go, no, we're doing the Cave of Jewels, and I want them to be all, okay, and I'm sat with the Cave of Fire, which looks stunning, and it's been once for the person it was made for, and then I used it in my own show once, but I deliberately went out to hire a cave that was like a fire cave because I wanted to use it in a show I was directing.
You never know who's going to be listening.
Oh, I know, a Cave of Fire, really reasonable rates. Lovely, stunning.
So how many costumes then do you actually keep in stock?
I think we have about 35 to 40,000 costumes in this building. Or garments, individual garments. We've just, it becomes, a stock check is you need to take your shoes off as well to do a stock check. But yeah, we've got, I know downstairs at the moment, we're saying 2019 is our year of 1,000 dames, because that's what we believe we have. We had just short of it last season. I've just cleared out about 70 dames that are no longer required. There's nothing wrong with them, it's just that we've either remade them, or they're an unusual size, or they've come off the back of another say we've bought a Panto in and the sizing's not appropriate, or the hat's gone missing and we don't have the fabric to remake the hat, or so they're all going in the next week, but what we've got on order will take us up over 1,000 dames by we hit the season. So, but like if you're doing Cinderella and they've got 10 changes each, that's 20 sisters. And we have done in the past had 8 Cinderellas out in the same time period. So you go, well, there's 160. Mental arithmetic's a bit shaky. But so there's 160 straight out just on your Cinderellas. And then you've got to back it up with 8 ball gowns, 8 fairy godmothers. Then not including your Jack and the Beanstalks and your Aladdins and everything else like that. So we do have a lot of stuff. And you can't show it. We used to have a lot of dames on the website, but it slowed the website down and you couldn't actually get on it if you were trying to get on it with your phone or anything like that. You just couldn't get on it. So we decided that everything now has to earn its hanger. It can't just sit here for years on end because we haven't got the room. We've looked at bigger buildings, but then you just go, actually, I've got a reasonably good deal here. And ultimately that's what, because I've got to pay rent on here, I've got to heat it, I've got to light it. So if you work out what everything's got to earn on its hanger to be in the building, it has to work. I've got a lot of things in here that I go, I just love it, and it's here for sentimental reasons. But it's got to work. We made a brand new set of mermaids last year for Peter Pan, and We made new mermaids. I've got designs for new pirates for this year, but I've not got Peter Pan this year. Yet. If anyone's looking for Peter Pan, I've got a brilliant Peter Pan with fabulous mermaids. But with big showgirl headdresses made with reeds and things in that were stunning. But we've just, I've got loads of Aladdins, and we will spend the next couple of months making Aladdin stock because we need it. But we have, like I say, everybody tends to do this. It goes in, and we find it in cycles, and we'll wonder which Panto's the most popular within us, But we have so much to go at. But you were saying about the difference between amateurs and professionals. On the whole, most people do pantomimes because they love it. And I used to perform in pantomimes myself, and people say, "Do you miss it?" And I used to say the first year I went, "No, I don't miss it. I don't miss it. No. I'm just glad of the rest." And I was glad of the rest. But then, as things have gone on, and I haven't done panto now for 4 or 5 years, and now I look at things and go, "Oh, I'd love to wear that. I could get such a laugh out of that costume," or "Oh, I just love one of those. I'd wear that wig in a shot," or "I'd wear that headdress," or "That is just me." And this fabric that I've bought, with the idea of, I'd wear that, but I just need to create it or send it to be, because I have a member of staff and their job just purely is to make pantomime dame costumes. Every week of the year they make pantomime dame costumes. That's all they're employed to do.
Would you have time for yourself to actually go and tread the boards over Christmas?
Do you know what? It just because by the time I've done everybody else's pantomime, I'm knackered. I'd love to. If I'm really lucky, I've got some amazing staff. I have got some corking staff. I kind of think that I've been doing dame on and off from probably being 27 was the first time I played dame. I did it at school, or tried to, but we never actually. They put a stopper to us doing anything because of the industrial action. But I think about it often, and think if it was maybe a short run, but certainly if anyone's looking for a dame with their own wardrobe, I have over 1,000 choices.
You get first dibs.
Yes. I've got some lovely things. I actually was due to do the last dame I should have played. I didn't actually play, and I've got the wardrobe for that sat there, brand new, never worn, and I've never sent it out to anybody else because it's just sat there waiting. I've got a zebra song sheet outfit that nobody's having till I've worn it, so it may sit there forever. But but yeah, we've got all sorts of things. You're asked every time, and people go, "Oh, I want to be an ice cream. I want to be a block of cheese. I want to be a windmill. I want to be," and and that's great, and they're great sight gags. But there's something that personally, I just love a really good working outfit that I can go out and work in and be comical and be not feel inhibited and be, because I'm very much a man with a dress on. When I play them, I'm somewhere between Mrs. Doubtfire and Fulton Mackay out of Porridge. I play this very sort of Scottish dame, though I've never done dame in Scotland. I've always played it around Sheffield and Mansfield and places like that. So I kind of have this very unusual juxtaposition of presenting a very unlocal dame in a venue, and I love watching other dames, and seeing, and I love watching dames in stuff that I've made or stuff that I've made for myself. It was really lovely because at the Panto Awards, Quinn Patrick wore a dress that was made for me, and it was so nice to see somebody else and go. And I was backstage because we were waiting for because we sponsored the Ugly Sister Award, and we were backstage waiting, and I was trying to see the thing. I thought I really wanted to see it from the front, not from the side, but it was so nice to see something that, oh, you know what, that does look nice, and I was really kind of go, oh, that was a good buy of fabric and stuff like that, and it's nice to see it on somebody else, because you can stand in the dressing room mirror and go, yeah, this is fine, yeah, I get it, but you never really see. It's that old Robbie Burns thing, oh God, the gift to give is to see ourselves as others see us. It's really nice to actually see that actually works, and that's the whip, my wig and my shoes, because we're the same size. A 10,
of course,
and the other foot's a 10 as well. So it's really nice to see it on and see something. And it's like one of the biggest things I get, and one of my biggest enjoyments, and I'm starting to make it a bit compulsory now, is that all the pro dames that we're dressing to come in and play for the day. Come in and see what wig works for you, what wig colour works for you. Come in and try the dressing. Come in and see how it feels. Don't wait till it turns up. You don't see it to the third day of rehearsals when you're dragged into the cupboard under the stairs where the wardrobe department lives to look at it, and then you see it. Because I mean, I've got a lot of costumes here that we don't send out to people, because if they don't know it's coming, it's a shock. So if you go, you know what, I've got this outfit and it's like this, and this is the gag in it. You know, we made a frock for a dame once that wanted to have his hands operate the boobs inside. She get fake arms and it operates the boobs inside. But you can't just send that to somebody on the back of a hire contract and go, oh, he needs 10 changes, oh, there's number 9. Because when he gets it and it's a cowgirl and it was done for Stand By Your Man, you have to talk to the production team. But I've got this costume, it's Stand By Your Man, and the bum 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 bum, and the boobs move. You just can't send that out. So things like that will sit. And if somebody looks at it on a rail, they go, I don't get that. I don't understand it. So that's something you have to talk to people about. And that's the great thing about when you get dames in and you get a measure of what they... I have costumes here that I can't get a laugh in. I put them on, not funny. And then there's other people that can put them on and get a great laugh. Andy, who does my washing here, comes in. He works somewhere else, but Andy and I played mother and son for many years, and then we decided we actually then played sisters, not ugly sisters. We played sisters in Beauty and the Beast, and I shared the stage with another dame, and I thought, this is really good because Andy's I'm quite a big guy, and Andy's quite thin, and there's things that he could do and wear, and he gets a laugh out of them. If I wore the same thing, it's not funny. And you know, and he did stuff, and that's now where I think it's nice to get them in. Try this on, try that on. Does this? Can you get a laugh there? Yep. Oh, could we have a different hat? Can we? Oh, it's too big. I can't. You know. Because some people go, oh, it's too glamorous. It's not glamorous enough. It's too. I don't want this. I don't want feathers. I want to be a pizza box. I want to be, you know, whatever. And that's lovely to actually get in and actually see people. You see the birth of this character. Where I really, I had a nice experience. It came from not a nice experience because we had a dame that we've dressed for a few years who became ill, and they had a new dame came in, very young man, who I said, look, let's bring him in. Let's put him in the shoes. Let's put him in the costumes. Let's see how it all works for him. And it was so nice because because I got invited to the performance to see him, and I went, and it was so nice to see this guy that's never done Dame before suddenly be brilliant at it. Totally different from what they've had previously, but embracing the everything that he'd been told. Go away and watch this. Go away and do this. And it come together, and him trying the outfits on, and becoming this whole fully rounded character. And that's what the costume does. Yes, sometimes you just have to send things because then people can't travel or they're involved in other projects and can't get time away, and we can't get diaries to sync. But it's really good for someone to say, yes, this is me, this is right. Because the thing with pantomime is there is no wrong and right. It's just taste. And some things work and some things don't. And, and if people can be a bit open-minded and a bit more like what I do, that is my style, if you like, my style of design and making, then it works. So it's always good fun.
What are the challenges then in costumes for you?
Sizing. Sizing is always a challenge. And we always actually use challenge is a word we use in here a lot, because we don't want any issues. We want challenges. People are getting different shapes, as far as what we make here. I mean, we've had ladies up to a 60-inch bust and similar waists. I do have somewhere in here a pair of 72-inch waist trousers somewhere that we bought for an actor for a show. That's somewhere here. People aren't 72-inch waists, but we are finding that it's how for pantomime particularly. Years ago, babes or juveniles meant just that. They were all small and young children. And young children were young children. Now, some theatres are having to use, say, more teenage girls because they're not having professional dancers. And that's budgetary, and that's acceptable. So, but then you've got people having, we've got a set of 8 juveniles, but 2 of the girls are bigger than the pro male dancers, because they're taller and they're just thicker waisted. It's just body shapes that make people transform. So that's always a challenge, because with juveniles, they're always the last sets of measurements you get, because they're not being cast till September, October in some cases, and then you then get the fact that nobody's measured them on the day of audition. They've all been sent home with a size chart, so you end up with 3 teams of 8. So you've got 24 separate aunties that have measured, all different, and then somebody's in the production team in the theatre has created this fake child one, that's how they matched them up. So you've got really odd measurements, and they're just giving you the biggest measurement of each. So you've got, they've got arms like an orangutan. And the knuckles must be dragging on the floor with this length of arm. And it's just because it's just 24 people's interpretation of measurements. And then you go, that set is not going to fit. And then there are occasions when people have gone, you know what, we didn't audition the kids, we just invited back the same kids as last year, and now we've measured them, they've grown, and you know, you've got a juvenile that's 6 foot, and you're having you're chatting and going, I go, well, they're supposed to be the younger sisters of the professional dancers. And you go, well, she's 6 foot, and your biggest pro boy's 5'7". Can you dress her as a man? Yeah, okay. And then you go, that's fine, yeah. But then we've also recently been dealing with children that with their gender identity, and that's something I never thought we would deal with, but it became really, really prevalent about 2-3 years ago, and that creates its own challenges of having how a child is identifying and their gender identity, and then you just can't just dress her as a boy, you know, because you've had a request to be, you know, to be sympathetic with that, and that's, I have no problem with that, but you just have to then be careful of not upsetting anybody or causing, you know, well, it's hard enough, you know, without some costume. You're giving it you know, big licks about, you know, what you do and what you don't do. But at some point, you know, we have to. Then this is when it all comes down to money, and somebody's got to. Who pays for it? Everything's doable. There's nothing. You know, never say never. Everything's possible. But at some point, we have to say, you know, I'm a commercial costume house. I'm not a costume charity. You know, my accountant thinks I have a hobby, which pays a wage, and I suppose in a way, I love it. And the day I stop loving it is the day to go, maybe I need to leave.
When you walk into the warehouse, is that how you like to refer to it?
I call it the studio.
The studio. The first thing I saw was the impressive pagoda.
Yes.
How on earth do you transport something like that?
In a van on its own. We actually, all these structured costumes we've had over the years, when you've got things like pagodas and teapots and Knickerbocker glories, slot machines, planets, all sorts of different things. They're not going to fold flat, so we actually send them out on a stand. So they go out on our dressmaker's dummy, because it's, and we have a bag. They have a bag for them to cover them. But you know what? I kind of, we send things out by direct courier on the we will box stuff up for small things and send it on, but it always messes up. When it's time sensitive, it always messes up. So believe you me, the amount of times we've had parcels on wagons where the driver said, I can't drive anymore, and that's got to be the theatre. That's just crazy. So things like those, they go out on the stand, in packaged, and like the and they go out on the stand. What happens to them in the theatre? I don't want to know. I hate being backstage in the theatre when my costumes are there, because that's when you see them. Maybe not hung up the way you would like them. Neglected and sad. You know, I mean, every costume has a life, and it hurts it. It hurts the costume. I believe that. I think it's got a purpose. You know.
How do things come back to you?
If I say this, we have had every single bodily fluid imaginable on a costume at some point. We have had the ones that do sort of stick in your mind are the lucky woman that managed to catch, who had obviously got an upset stomach, and managed to catch all of the vomit in the skirt and get it off and not spill any of it and put it in a bin bag and leave it while she didn't do the rest of the show week, leave it festering in the bin bag, and then the van driver went and collected it on a Saturday night, and the driver drives it into a secure location and then delivers it into me on the Monday morning. And when he opened the van, that was I think that's one of the nicest moments. And then at that point you go, do you know what? I can't clean that. In all honesty, how can I send that to somebody else? Somebody else wouldn't know, because the amount we spend on dry cleaning, washing, and the effort we go on to try and keep as much of it as clean as we can becomes, that's the biggest thing. But that just went in the bin, because I'm not going to attempt that. But some stuff comes back beautiful. I mean, we once sent out a King and I to somebody, and it came back, and I unpacked it, because we send things out in gown bags on hangers, because by the time we've pressed it, to fold it up and put it in a box, and somebody else is going to press it at the other end, it's not worth it. And I went, they've not worn it. They've not worn one of these costumes. And it was only because we Kimball labels to them with the instructions and who's wearing what and what scene, that the Kimballs had been removed, and someone had pinned the label back onto each costume, and they'd sent it back in immaculate condition. I mean, it was you could tell it had been worn. It needed to be washed. You could tell that there was makeup on it, but on the whole, it was so beautifully done. I remember writing such a beautiful email to them saying, "Thank you for the care you've taken over this," and it was really nice, really well packaged. Most of the problem, though, is people trying to get out of the theatre, and and a lot of theatres don't have massive wardrobe departments, and they're some theatres are staffed by volunteers and things like that. And some people make a good attempt, and some not so. It all gets washed anyways. It's got to come off the hanger, whether it arrives on the hanger or not.
What's kind of then the lifespan for a costume? An average costume?
It depends. Sometimes we'll send it out and it comes back, and we've maybe made an error in judgment in the fabric, and by the time we've washed the fabric for the first time, it's lost its lustre. It may be, I've got some old vintage pieces that I've bought maybe at an auction, or I've come off the back of another show. I've bought shows that are finished, and there are shirts in that say are brand new. They've been the understudy shirt, or they've been the one to wash and wear. And then there's been the other shirt that's absolutely ragged off the back of it, and it's just not. It really depends. Depends how they're looked after. I mean, we'd spend a lot of time caring for stuff and maintaining it. Repairs, laundry. Like with the structures, they all need, you check that they need paint jobs or the braids are on them. I mean, I'm not saying that things don't slip through the net, because they do. It's there's a lot of, we're humans doing it, aren't robots. Some stuff lasts well, and then just some things you just get sick of seeing and just go, we had a thing a couple of years ago. We had to sort through and got rid of some stuff, and we all had our own rails of things, and we had a sort of like an X Factor competition of whether something stayed or goes, or went through to judges' houses to be reconsidered at a later date, and then you just have to be. We will probably get rid of a costume because we're fed up with it before we get rid of something that's falling apart, if that makes sense. I'd rather go I'll give it a life somewhere else. So we either sell it on, or we donate it to various, like maybe a local youth theatre or local maybe amateur dramatics companies, and just look, we've got a couple of bags of costumes. We've also donated to some charities for special needs adults that have enjoyed the dress up experience, and that's quite kind of nice. That they said, if you get anything you get rid of, 3 bin bags there if you want. And so we kind of just, sometimes you just got to let things go. But I think any costumier is a hoarder. You really have to be a really naughty costume to be thrown out of here. You have to be.
I have noticed that there is quite a bit of stuff here.
We have got quite a lot of stuff. We've got too much stuff. And, I think the other week when I was going through Dames and disposing of things, I think Kirsty, who was doing it with me here, was quite surprised at things that I was going, get rid of that. Why are you getting rid of that? I says, because I'd rather get rid of it while there's still life in the fabric to somebody that can use it than give it another couple of years to batter the life out it and it ends up in the bin. Whereas if it went to somebody individually that will go, this is my own, and I will look after it, and I will do those little repairs on it, or I will add a bit more braid, or I will customise it, it's better than me waiting till the thing is absolutely on its last legs. Because then, if you're the person that has it just before it's on its last legs, you're not going to keep and respect it and look after it. That's why it ends up on its last legs. But we try to keep everything in by maintaining it. You can get, but a rip is a rip. You can sometimes replace it, but it just depends. If you love the costume enough, I think.
You said before we started recording about Baby Shark causing some problems for you over Christmas last year.
Yes, Baby Shark. I think the thing is, it's like you make costumes to withstand a certain you go through a certain rigmarole. So working costumes need to be, when you're making for comics and dames that really are going to give it, and they're doing slosh and they're doing high level activity stuff, it's great. And you make it a certain way, and you make it in certain fabrics. It's when people were doing like adding Baby Shark as encores and re-singing it again in finale costumes, and you just think they were made to walk down half a dozen steps and take a bow, and they weren't made for you to do a whole Baby Shark routine in it and be giving it stuff. It's not what they were designed for or made for, because we've not chosen those fabrics to look great as for a walk down, not to Baby Shark in. And you just see it and you just go, oh no, think of as the seams, you just go, not fabric was, because something, with theatre costumes, you're never normally just the fabric. You've got the lining, you've got a cotton backing, you've got the fabric, you may have a glitter overlay on top of that. And some of these fabrics are fine, and you've tried to give them as much strength as you can. But, you're Baby Shark was a challenge, and I'm hoping the Baby Shark thing's everyone's got it out of the system, and it's going to be like a no-go this year. Because I think I kind of worry for these people that are going around judging pantomimes and having to see 60 versions of the same song.
Where do you source your fabric from?
Oh, everywhere. You know what? We go up to Bradford and go around some of the Indian shops up there, and that's really good. We go to Manchester and some of the mills there to get stuff. I'm lucky I have a few reps that come and tempt me with things that I shouldn't buy, but then go down to Birmingham to the rag market and see amazing offcuts and end of rolls and bits and pieces, or and then you go down to London and you can go to like Berwick Street and go to like Borovick's. I just tend to look in there. Nobody really has the budget for me to shop in Borovick's, which is a fabulous place. And I would say just I go up the Goldhawk Road and go into there, and you just go. You know, people say you're going to London for the weekend, and you go, yeah. What are you going to see? A show? Yeah, if I get back from there in time. And you know, there have been times I've been to get the train back from Birmingham, and I've got 2 massive laundry bags that I can't pick up, and I'm dragging them up to New Street. And if anyone knows where the rag market is, and you're coming up from the rag market to New Street, and you've got to go uphill. I've found an easy way. There's steps. There's steps everywhere to get from the rag market to New Street Station. And if you don't hit it right, and you end up at the back of New Street Station, and all by John Lewis's, and you just see this massive, great big flight of stairs that looks like, you know, Don Arden's about to do a big showgirl number up and down it, and you've got 2 big bags, and it's up 3 steps down to pick the next bag up, because I can't go up with both big bags because I've just bought too much. It's quite comical. I think I could be a YouTube sensation with me trying to get fabric up into New Street Station, and then I tried to go into somewhere to get coffee or some lunch when I've done, and I've got these big bags, and so I put them down, and then it's bags unattended, and the amount of times people have come back to them, and there's a member of staff stood around my bags going, "These yours?" I went, "Yeah, you shouldn't leave bags unattended on the railway station." I know, I was just getting a coffee. And I can't carry a coffee in 2 big laundry bags full of, you know, and it's just, you know, it is. It's, I get fabric from everywhere. I mean, I buy a guy in France that I know if I need stuff. I've got people that I can ask for. I'm looking for such and such a thing. There will always be things that I will never have again, and I mourn the loss of certain fabrics or fabric ranges, and I just think that's so good, and it lights so well on stage, and it always looks so good, but I can't get it for love nor money, or the quality goes in it, which is one of the biggest problems I find, is that to keep the price, they lower the quality, and stuff that you would go, oh, this would make lovely medieval dresses, and it's now so thin, or like used to be lots of like fabulous coloured satins and patterned satins, and now they're so weak and they pull and they're just useless now. You know, it's a shame, but it makes you look harder and it makes you work harder in the terms of your design. You know, and sometimes the fabric comes first and a design because I've got this fabric, and sometimes it's the design and then I have to go and source it. But it's nice because, you know, I can sometimes I see things and I go, I know, you know, a particular pantomime, it look good for a particular pantomime, or like because we make for different dames, and I know I'll get that because I know when I show so and so that fabric, they're going to want a frock in that. And what I don't like to do is to make 2 identical frocks. I don't like doing that, because I think for dames that we have, that we make for, I'm trying to give them some uniqueness. So this is where, but there's only one dress we made 2 of. One we sold and one we kept, and it's so distinctive that and they are identical, and I don't like that, because I think you're selling a dame a personality. But it was just because of the braid we had for it. And I made it up, and someone saw it and they said, I want one of those. And I said, I don't normally make it the same. He says, but I just want it. Okay, well, we'll make you one. But I need it for a photo shoot. So I sold him the one we'd made for ourselves, and then we remade it for stock. But we did that with sort of a what's the word? With sort of permission. Whereas I like to have different things.
Is there anything that you want to make that you haven't made yet?
Oh, I have books and books and books of designs. I have got finales. I've got a box of chocolates finale designed. But selling someone a brown finale is not easy. But it's and I suppose being a commercial costumier, you know, if people are hiring a set, there's not many brown finale sets to hire, whereas there's loads of, you know, turquoise and silver and red and gold and pink and silver sets out there. So you kind of are things like that. I mean, I've got a beautiful chocolate limes finale drawn up, and I have the material for it, which is I've got some lime sequin material and some like really dark chocolate material to make this lime and chocolate finale. We've made one dress up just in case somebody says, hey, let's do chocolate. But I know that once I make it, the selling of it is going to, you know, it's got to have a life. I mean, when I was designing for individual groups, and you know, I've come up with all sorts of finales. You know, cream and silver, which was one I loved. It looked really fabulous, and you know, all different colour combinations. I mean, I have an iron brew finale, which is the colours of iron brew, which we did for Scottish Company one year. But it's been so hard to sell beyond that, you know, and it's an Aladdin as well. So it's like it's very specific. Yeah. But you know, we there are so many finales that I've drawn up, because I'll sit there. I mean, like the other week, I was on a train and I designed a white and silver finale for somebody that said that they wanted white and silver, and when it came back to it, they came back to, oh no, it's lilac. It's lilac and silver. And I thought, I've got a lilac and silver set, so I designed the white and silver, and it'll stay as a design until, because I've already got a couple of versions of white and silver finales, but this was a specific Jack and the Beanstalk, and I felt that while I have a white that works for Peter Pan, and one that works quite nicely for like the Snow Queen, which is I think is a difficult subject for pantomime, but it's come out of the Frozen phenomenon, when, you know, so we do have lots of different colour combinations, and you know, I've got orange and champagne, which we call Bucks Fizz, you know, which is like orange and champagne gold, and you know, you kind of sometimes see fabrics just as they land on the cutting table, or they're stood next to one another, and you go, ooh. And one of the things that I do find a little frustrating is sometimes, you know, you got, I really have this idea and you want to make it and you're so enthusiastic about it, but you just know that it will be difficult to dance in, and you really need to be having that conversation with the choreographer before they pick the music, because it will be a tricky, you know, like I kind of did the design thing based on some Kate Greenaway sketches, which were like big hats, very under the bust Victorian things, and everybody here loves them and can't wait to make them, but I says they're just going to be so difficult to dance in if somebody's doing pop, a really poppy modern panto. And I think that's what you have to be, I'm very aware of now, is that musically people aren't doing as much of the old standards musically, even in amateurs. They really want modern music, and the costumes have to reflect that, because if you're going to be doing modern dancing, and particularly now you see that like people are taking street dancing to Panto, like with the diversity and the twist and pulse and those people injecting some, and they're fabulous. They really are fabulous to see, and that's what my nephew goes to dance class, and I went, oh, what are you doing, ballet, tap? He went, no, I'm doing street dance. And friends at work, their boys go to do street dance, and it's great that boys are in dancing, which is, and there's not the stigma of doing ballet and tap. They're doing street dance. And that is coming through, I think, in Panto. You're having to look at what is current. This is fashions again. You have to keep going, and I go and try and see a lot. Not as a pantomime. I do see a lot of pantomime. But you go, and then you have to interpret that and go, that was really good. It would be not better, but maybe if the costume allowed this. And I'm talking about my own stock. I'll go, we can't. The skirts will have to be circular. We need to be able to spin because the girls are moving, or they can't be too long. They need to be based this way, based the other way. They need bigger petticoats. They need smaller petticoats. And sometimes you only actually see that when the show's up and running.
Would you say it's a learning curve?
Yeah, always. And again, it's the thing of the day I stop learning, is the day that, I love to be able to think at the end of the day, I've learned something new today. I've learned how to do something. I've learned maybe something about my abilities or lack of, and go, do you know what? Don't do that again. Get someone else to make that, because that looks like the Elephant Man made it. That looks like it's been handcrafted by sheep. Get someone else to make that. They'll do a fabulous job. And I kind of sort of always have that thing of the best person for the job. And that's why I would rather go, ultimately, yeah, I can make that and it'll be cheaper. But if someone else makes it, it'll be better. It'll look better. And that's why, there are a lot of themes with this. And I think you look at dames now, and one of the things that we found with dames is dames are no longer, on the whole, a big fat man in a dress. That, I would say, as a company, we've got that market cornered. I have got plenty of that stuff. But we are getting younger dames that want to be a bit more. And if I use glamours with a small g, they're a bit neat. They're not. They may be more leaning towards female impersonation rather than, big butch man in a dress. And I don't mean drag by that. I mean, it is more. While they may have a very traditional looking dame's dress, it's very fitted and it's very in and out and structured. And that's a fashion. But I mean, there are so many fabulous pantomime performers that retire or pass away, and you go, oh God, I didn't get a chance to see them work. Or I talk to younger dames and go, I wish I had the opportunity. And I go, and then I feel lucky myself that I got a chance to see people like John Inman and Stanley Baxter work. But I regret never having seen Les Dawson live. I thought, I wished, and there was opportunities, but you kind of think these people live forever, and they don't. And you look at how they made their costumes their own. I was talking to someone about John Inman the other day, and them they'd never seen John Inman work, and I was explaining when I saw him, and he was doing Mother Goose at the Davenport Theatre in Stubble. The Davenport used to be I used to love going there, and I used to go there every year as part of my little Panto tour. We saw John Inman this year, and it was just how he made his costumes work for him, because he started off with very little makeup and a very, very ordinary little grey wig and a little floral dress, which even back then I thought, well, I would never have done that. I would have had some. But then when you actually see the story he told in his costumes, they got more and more outrageous. And I think some things, and that taught me a lesson, that, you know, if you come out as your opening thing in sequins and spangles and feathers, where do you go? You know, how do you get bigger? And I think that's something that I like to talk about with producers and when I'm designing something. Where are we going? What's the story we're telling? Because in a lot of pantomimes now, a principal will have one costume in a finale. There's no passage of time where Jack might have had, back in the days of traditional slap on my thigh principal boys, you know, they would have a wardrobe of costumes. They would have 3 or 4 costumes changing as necessary. And now you've got a lot of people going, well, it's one costume and a walk down. Or just one costume. You know, the villain's not changing, the fairy's not changing. And then you have to talk to them about the whole concept of how the picture works. What are you leaving your audience with? You know, you've got a green villain, a white fairy, and red and gold finale costumes. And because you're cutting characters down, you've only actually got 3 principals in a colour, because that person's not changing and this person isn't changing, and you know, and then you kind of have this thing of and they're not wearing it all because they won't wear the hat and they won't wear the jester collar, and that is what's telling the children what the character is. But that person's too cool for school, and it's about, can you not just wear it for the opening run on, hello boys and girls, I'm the jester, this is too hot in this hat and collar. He's not going to wear it at all, so it's going to sit in the dressing room. Oh.
And that must frustrate you, surely.
Yes. It frustrates me when people go and take the sleeves out of things and you see it and you go, case in point, snow scene, where we're paying thousands of pounds to have snow in the audience, and you've made kids with long sleeves in, and you've got long sleeve blouses for because you've got snow painted on your set, and Muggins as a designer thinks, wouldn't it be really good if they had woolly hats and scarves to match? And you go, oh yeah. I go, now who am I going to make woolly hats and scarves? And you source them, and then they go, no, we're not wearing the woolly hats and scarves, and we've decided to take the sleeves out of the senior dancers because they can't do the moves with the sleeves in. And then you go and you see the show, and they're just stood, and they never raise their arms once. They just don't listen. There's a thing as a wardrobe, as I find it, that you put a show together, you send it out. 99 times out of 100, you never hear from them again, or you hear from them, how does this work? You know, I've got you're wearing it upside down. Oh, got it now. You know, and there's all these little bits of things. But you get it sorted, the show goes up, and then the show's been running for 2 or 3 weeks, and you go, and there'll be some lovely person you've been dealing with in theatre that's been liaising with you, getting the show in. That's, you know, the contact. It's nothing to do with the wardrobe department, and you come and see it, and you get to the box office, and you'll pick your ticket up, and you're stood in the foyer, you know, getting a drink, avoiding buying a raffle ticket. Not because I don't want to buy a raffle ticket, but I'll pay for it. I don't want any tickets, but give it to the next kid that can't. I don't want you to draw my name out of a raffle and I've already gotten. Don't want that. And they come running to you and go, we just need to say that the girls aren't wearing the bonnets in the finale, and we've had to take the sleeves out of stuff, and this is this, and don't worry because he's not wearing the hat, but it's safe. And you get the big thing of how they've redesigned your work because they didn't feel that the producers come and agreed it all, seen it all, signed it off, you've sent it, and then people go, well, she can't dance in it, she can't this in it, she can't the next in it, so we've just altered it. And you just go, okay. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I can't. Frustrating, yes. Particularly when I think as a company we've invested extra finances in to finish it, and you sometimes go, what was the point of me spending £300, say, on having hats knitted when they don't wear them? I could have saved myself a lot of aggro, and that's kind of a thing I think might always be my problem as a business person. I can be as a designer, the heart of the design needs to sometimes be controlled more by the head. But then I love what I do, and I think, oh, just those hats, just for me, just make it. They just make, it's just that finish. Like, I think everybody in Panto should have a hat on their head, regardless. They should have something on their head. And I design hats, and we make hats. And normally it's in the shows where we don't design hats that people go, anyway, it would be really nice if you'd sent some hats with those. You've not sent hats with them. And he goes, you didn't want hats. You didn't wear hats last year. You didn't want hats. Or it's a ballroom. They won't be wearing hats inside. They should be in white powdered wigs. Oh, well, they're not going to wear wigs. Or, will you send me some wigs? I'm going, have you got budget for wigs? Oh, no, I've not got budget for wigs. Okay, I'll send you some hats. It's all... Do you know what? You have to be able to go, meh. Not my problem. Not my issue. You've got it, and I'd rather you have it and decide not to wear it than phone me up and go, we need hats, or we want something else.
So for you, is the hats the cherry on top of your trifle?
Yes, they are definitely. And this is why, we're working with I like dames in hats. I always do, and we've invested a lot with David Burt from Wig Art in this past couple of years, making the hard fibre wigs. But they are not easy in which to do the kind of hats that we as Molly Limpets make. So last year when we got the wigs, we had to remake a lot of headdresses last month. We knew we were going to have to, but we didn't know how they were all going to quite work. And so this year we're coming up with a whole new designs of wigs with David's help, to allow us to use our millinery but fit on the wigs, and have wigs which are composite pieces and can do a lot more with. And that I found really exciting. Is I've learned so much from David about wigs in general, and his way of doing dames and ways around he's worked on things, and we've come up with different ways of working things out, and that's really exciting because years ago when I used to play dames locally in Sheffield, I had my best friend, bless him, has made me so many hats and shoes to play dame in. And he used to say, because I've got quite a big head, he says he used to make them on a bucket with two fists up the side to make them fit on my head with a wig on. And we never kind of grasped about how, and he would make things like, he would make them on builders' helmets and stick hair to them. And we would buy cheap wigs and glue them with these builders' helmets with hair and lacquered and sprayed with varnish. So I remember him he made me, we were doing Dick Whittington, and he made me a 4-foot galleon hat in cardboard, and it was a I mean, Ian is an amazing craftsman, and he makes amazing, and what he can make out of yogurt pots and sticky back plastic is nobody's business. And he made me this 4-foot galleon, and I went, I can't work in it. I literally cannot move in it. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to go on with a wig. And then you come back to it as you look at it, you walk away from it, you come back and look at it and go, no, I'm wearing that. Swine. I'm wearing that because I know I'm going to walk on stage and I'm going to bring the house down with this unfeasibly large hat. But I'm doing the mops routine, but I can't actually bend over in it. So we're just going to have to rejig it. And that's the thing for me as a designer and a costume maker. I would rather rejig the routine than lose the costume. I would alter the dance routine. Mr. Unpopular here. And people go, can't dance in it. Change the routine. You know...
great controversy.
I go, that's fine, I'll change it, but I think change the routine. Because I think, okay, they can't kick that high for that 1 second, but the audience have got to look at that costume for 20 minutes. You know, and that's kind of my thing. But you know what? Sometimes you just have to go suck it up, buttercup, put it on, get your bum on stage and get the laugh. I remember years and years ago doing a production of Cinderella and having no money in the budget, and we did the ballroom scene in the best costumes we could find in the wardrobe that were maybe donated or what have you in the wardrobe department of the theatre that we would never put together. So, you know, you got, this is a really fabulous Arabian type robe. We'll make it a masked ball. We could do whatever. And it came to the finale, and we were having a pink finale. And all the principals were in pink. And I felt really bad for the chorus, because the chorus were going to go back on in this multicoloured thing that you'd seen before. And I thought, my thing is, I do this with dames where they say, well, I'm only going to have a costume actor and a costume actor in a finale. Quote for the song sheet from Lucky. And I'm thinking, you wouldn't go back on stage and tell the same gag again. But if you wear the same frock, you're telling the same gag again. I understand if you're just nipping on and off and it's a baking scene, you can't physically change, or you're doing business. Although some dames do. Sometimes, you know, if they're off stage, it's full tights thing, and they can do it in seconds because they've got it down to an art. But in this Cinderella, and it came to like the 11th hour and the show's about to open, and I'm going, this isn't right. And I remember going to get some 3 meters for £1 pink fabric, so you can imagine what it's like. It's practically like cagoule fabric. It's like ripstop. It's the vilest, liningest, brine nylonist, horrible thing. This is back in the late 80s. And I create the world's worst ball gowns. They are horrible. There's no lining in them. There's no money. There's, you know, literally they were safety pinned on because there wasn't money for zips. I would have to have taken zips out of other outfits that were in the hang, and I didn't have time. So we made these dresses and they were safety pinned into them every night. In the wardrobe, there was some white clown wigs. And I set upon them with spray and brushes and set them into as near as I could for powdered wigs. I made ringlets out of wool, out of white wool and rope, and I made tiaras out of sequin waste, and they had sashes out of the sequin waste stuff, and they were vile. But on opening night, on the finale, the curtains opened and the front 6 rows of brownies all went, oh! And I thought, it's done. That's what people want. That's what people want to see and go, oh, that's beautiful. The magic. I was very lucky that at one point in my life I met the person that taught me the most about theatre and pantomime, and it was a guy called Saxon Lucas, and he'd done Emu the Panto down in London, and he tells stories of literally the cloths were coming in on opening night and he was going round painting the bottom of the cloths out because that's how tight it was for time. So on opening night he's painting out the bars on the bottom of the cloth. He was running along the stage like that, and he told me something, the most important thing I've learned about pantomime, and that's the magic. It's that little sprinkling of magic. That's what you need. And if your fairy doesn't look like she can perform magic, they won't believe it. And you have to have that panto magic. And you can make it out of nothing. If you've got the time or the inclination, you can move miracles. You can make miracles happen in minutes in panto. And you know what? If you've got something and it looks good, one line in a panto takes you anywhere. You know, we've got to go to the Baron's Castle, but the Baron's Castle's on the moon because you've got a moon set. You can go anywhere. You know, from creating pantomimes, as I have done both from costumes, I do a bit of writing with my friend Andy. Andy does most of the writing and I just point in the right direction. And he writes for his mother-in-law's amateur dramatics group. They're in a tiny little 100-seater venue. And they don't have people to do so. So we wrote Cinderella on one set. So everything happens in one set. And it's amazing how you just explain why. We did everything in the castle courtyard. So the Baron had to sell Hardup Hall and came with the sisters looking for work at the palace. You know, you can do so much with it. And I think sometimes you have to go, this is how I'm making it work. This is my resources. And this is how we're going to make. You can go to see shows like at the London Palladium, which are an assault to your eyeballs. And there are ostrich feathers and stuff, and it is so spectacular. And you can go to places like the Birmingham Hippodrome and see that every penny Kudos has been thrown at it. And it's spectacular. But you can also go to some wonderful little venues and see some amazing feats of skill and magic and moments that make even the adults gasp. And it doesn't have to be about, you know, spending millions and millions of pounds. It's about being clever and about being magical. And that is worth its weight in gold.
Well, this leads me to my last question for you. Your dream panto. So you could be in it, you can choose the theatre, you can be sitting in the audience, you could choose the cast, alive or deceased, and you can even choose who you'd like to make the costumes.
Oh, right. Well, I'd like to design it and get someone to make it. I'll shop for the fabric and then I can come back later and go, oh, no. More braid on, please. The sort of stuff that we do here and we go, oh, that's all we've got, okay. I suppose for me, do you know what, I think my panto cast would be a fight for personalities, because I would love to use the people that I think, you know, I think for me personally, my Dame would probably be Stanley Baxter.
What's the panto?
Mother Goose.
Mother Goose.
It would have to be Mother Goose because I love Mother Goose. I think it would have to be Stanley Baxter's Mother Goose. I would certainly have to have Sue Pollard in there somewhere. Probably as the villain. Because I think Sue's a great Panto performer. And I think opposite Sue would be Elaine C. Smith as the fairy. Because I just think that would be electric. I just think my Panto would be sort of like one of those things that you go, let me come up for air. Because there be so many big personalities in it. Oh gosh, now. Yeah, it'd be Mother Goose, and I would have Sue Pollard and Elaine C. Smith and Stanley Baxter. I really am enjoying Matt Slack down at Birmingham, and I think he would be my comic in it. And I would have the Grumbleweeds as my broker's men, because they made me laugh so much. And I've enjoyed them in so many pantos. Who else? I have to say, and this might be sort of a controversial one, but I remember seeing Linda Lusardi as Principal Girl back in the 1980s and early 90s, and thought she was wonderful. I know she does Wicked Queen now and Fairy Godmothers and stuff, but I do think Linda made a lovely Principal Girl. You know, Principal Boy. I don't know. I really don't know who I would have as a Principal Boy. I think this part of me would like a male Principal Boy, because I think you can get some good big ballads out of that. So maybe a Principal Boy for me would be going to find somebody new, somebody that was maybe out of college, somebody that's got a big vocals and a lot of talent. And I certainly would have that fabulous ventriloquist boy that was at the Panto Awards, whose name's Max. He just blew everybody out the water. I'd have him like a shot. What he'd do in Mother Goose, I don't know. He would have to, would create a part.
And would you bring your goose out of retirement?
If I could have someone to repair her that really knew what they were doing, then I would. But I have her sister goose that I made, which I made when I played Mother Goose, and she is like a gosling chick, and she's much more animated because she's actually got wings that the performer gets in, and she has, like I say about you learn to make eyes that do what you want it to do, and a beak that wants that can be operated from the thing. So that, or maybe I would give my goose to something like Twins FX, and go, there's my goose, repair her, but do wonders with the eyes, and or I might say, can we phone the Jim Henson Company up and get some fabulous magic goose?
We'll stick with the twins. They like a challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would have that, and I would want a speciality act in it. I'd want speciality acting because I miss that. But I loved back in the day seeing people like Norman Barrett with his budgies, and that's, in one sense, it's got no place in Panto because if you sat at the back, you can't see the budgies. But just I miss that in Panto where you get, for no reason whatsoever, here's somebody coming on. It's like it's I know it was more in the plot, but like, you know, when you got the, like in Peter Pan at Birmingham last year, when you got the drunken pirate and the what are they called, the acrobats that were in the India, I can't remember the name of the
Timbuktu
Tumblers. Brilliant stuff, and I love that. I think that's missing in a lot of Panto.
Sasha, he's the drunken pirate,
yeah,
isn't he? He does
yes.
the rollerball there.
That things like that scare the living daylights out of me. I can't watch that. I mean, literally, I watch that through my fingers because I know he's not going to fall, but there's always that. He might, and that scares the. I'm not good with heights. and stuff like that. You know, he's up 3 steps, and that just thing.
What's the theatre? Where would you like it?
Do you know what? I'm going to say the Crucible in Sheffield. Gosh, I've just got really emotional then. It's my local theatre now, and they do wonderful things. And I remember when the Crucible did Pantos. And the thing with the Crucible is it's a thrust stage, for those that don't know it. And when they used to do pantomime, the stage level wasn't a stage. It was a series of trapdoors. And things came up and down, and villains shot up out of it, and fairies shot up. People disappeared. And I miss that element of really basic old-fashioned theatre. Crucible don't do Panto anymore. They do a big Christmas musical with the Lyceum. And I think, you know, for me, I think I would like to... Sheffield has become my adopted home, really. I live here, I work here. I've spent more of my life in this city than any other. And I would like to maybe give back to the people of Sheffield the pantomimes that I would have loved to have created. And I think that would be a gift, my gift to the city, if you like, to have that, something of that scale.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story on the Panto podcast.
Thank you very much.